AI might be killing Tailwind and maybe even open source. This is a really sad story to start the year, but it's an alarming pattern that I want to talk about, so let's just jump into it. Now, I started to see this story all over Twitter, and it actually stems from a PR request that was made into the Tailwind documentation. You can see the feature here was to add in an llms.txt endpoint for LLM optimized documentation. And what happened here was this PR was in November 18th, 2025, and seemingly after a bit of time here, it wasn't being reviewed. So it led to them asking, why is this one not moving? And you can see after a while, which is 2 days ago, we got a response from Adam here. Adam says, I have more important things to do, like figure out how to make enough money for the business to be sustainable right now. And making it easier for LLMs to read our docs means less traffic to our docs, which means less people learning about our paid products and the business being even less sustainable. Now, for a bit of context, if you don't know what business he is talking about, Tailwind CSS, yes, is a completely open source library and you can use it for free, but to try and supplement the cost of actually maintaining and developing Tailwind, they've always offered Tailwind Plus here, which you can see is just some beautifully designed, expertly crafted components and templates by the makers of Tailwind CSS. So you can get some various different UI blocks, templates, and UI kits. You can see loads of different examples down here. I must admit, Tailwind Plus was super helpful when I worked at a company previously. When I was first starting to learn Tailwind, I always referenced these examples. This is actually quite a common model that we've seen in open source before, where essentially you have an open source library, and then the makers behind that have a separate company that has either tangentially related products, maybe they're hosting infrastructure or something like that, and that's how they want to make their money to actually maintain the open source software. Other popular examples of this model include Laravel, Sidekick, Elastic, and Redis, all building out a company around the actual open source product that they offer. The argument now, though, is that AI has kind of taken away the advertising that they get to these Tailwind Plus components, since less people are actually going to the documentation, and B, I think AI can already write components similar to these. Yes, they're never perfect, trust me, and I would much prefer people use the Tailwind Plus examples, but people aren't going to. They're going to ask that LLM to generate them a hero section or something like that, and it's probably already scraped loads of examples that are based on this Tailwind Plus one, so LLMs are kind of killing this side of the business. Now, back in the PR, there was actually a bit of a back and forth about this being a disappointing response, but you can see a lot of people liked Adam's initial response, and a lot of people didn't like this response, so I think a few people are siding with Adam here, or at least feeling some sympathy, which is hard not to. As you can see, later on, he actually adds in a bit more clarification of what's been going on over at Tailwind, and he says, I totally see the value in the feature, I'd like to find a way to add it, but the reality is that 75% of the people on our engineering team lost their jobs here yesterday because of the brutal impact that AI has had on our business. Now, he actually uploaded a Twitter voice note where he explained that the team has now gone down from 4 engineers to just 1, so they had to lay off 3 people, and that is a terrible thing to go through. He then continues his comment saying every second he spends trying to do fun, free things for the community like this is a second he's not spending trying to turn the business around and make sure that the people who are still here are getting their paychecks each month. Then we get a bit more context on what's actually going on with the Tailwind documentation and the business. So traffic to their docs is down 40% from early 2023, despite Tailwind being more popular than ever. Now, that 40% figure is absolutely crazy because if you look at Tailwind's growth itself via their NPM downloads, you can see at the start of last year, they had around 6 million, and at the end of last year, they had 32 million. So they have wildly grown in popularity this year as AI tends to write in Tailwind. You've probably seen that yourself. So most vibe-coded apps are using Tailwind, and just the popularity of Tailwind has exploded. So the fact that the documentation is getting 40% less visitors from 2023 is mind-blowing. But when thinking about this a little more, it makes a lot of sense. I don't think I've personally visited the documentation in the last 6 months, and I probably last went when Tailwind v4 came out, so there were a few migration issues, but I used to visit it quite a lot when I was learning how to use Tailwind, as there was always really good examples on the Tailwind docs. I say they are some of the best documentation out there, but now AI is just pretty good at writing these examples. And when there is a harder issue that people are getting stuck on, yes, I would probably go and visit the docs, although I don't think I've gotten stuck on many Tailwind issues recently. And I think if someone is a vibe coder, they're probably not going to go check the docs. They're just going to ask AI to implement it in another way. Adam then goes on to explain again what we saw earlier, where it says the docs are the only way that people find out about their commercial products, so those Tailwind Plus components I showed you earlier. And without customers, they can't afford to maintain the framework. He wants to find a way to figure out how to offer LLM optimized docs that doesn't make the situation even worse, because again, they had to go through some layoffs, and he's nervous to offer them without solving that problem first. Finally, at the end of this thread here, who's actually replying to someone saying that this feature is so that people can build more things with Tailwind in a faster and more efficient capacity, and I can understand this argument. When you're looking at Tailwind from just the open source package point of view, having an llms.txt is absolutely great. More people are going to be able to use it as the LLMs can understand the documentation better, they're going to write better Tailwind, and it's just going to be a better process. But you can see why this is a double-edged sword. This is when you think about Tailwind as just the open source package and not the maintainers behind it and who is paying them. As it says here, Tailwind is growing faster than ever and it's been bigger than it ever has been, and our revenue is down close to 80%. So we're getting some actual figures there. Right now, there's no correlation between making Tailwind easier to use and making development of the framework more sustainable. He needs to fix that before making Tailwind easier to use benefits anyone, because if he can't fix this, the project is going to become unmaintained abandonware when there's no one left to employ to work on it. He appreciates the sentiment and agrees in spirit. It's just more complicated than that right now. This is just such a heartbreaking situation for the Tailwind team to be facing. As we say, from the outside, when you look at Tailwind, just as that open source package, it is doing very well and it's only getting more and more popular. And that is the problem with it, is someone then has to maintain the library that is now incredibly popular, and someone probably has to pay those maintainers, especially if you want it to be actively maintained. So I am very curious to see where this is going to go. Where is the Tailwind team going to pivot to try and get that revenue to support the maintenance of Tailwind as the open source library? Now, I highly recommend, if you're in a position to sponsor them, to go over there and give them a sponsor or ask your company to sponsor them. Yes, they don't want to rely on sponsors, but I'm sure it'll be a big help at the moment. And I've been seeing a push online to get sponsors over there as well. I've also seen other arguments online about where they could go with that product. I don't think they're offering Tailwind components in that UI kit is going to be sustainable going forward. I saw some wild suggestions that they might want to add in a vibe coder, similar to what we've seen other apps do, but this vibe coder is specialized in design knowledge, using the knowledge that the Tailwind CSS team has. But obviously, we have no idea about where Tailwind is going to go in the future. I just really hope they find a way to successfully be able to afford the maintenance of the Tailwind library. The final thing I have to say about all of this is I don't think this llms.txt is even going to impact the usage of the documentation. I think at this point, LLMs are already pretty good at scraping websites, even if they don't have these llms.txt. I mean, I've actually heard that llms.txt isn't even used as a standard yet. We're just trying to push that it is actually actively used, but none of the big providers like Anthropic and OpenAI are using them. And also, I think they've just scraped the Tailwind docs already and enough Tailwind examples. There is so many Tailwind examples out there that have probably been used in the training data. So if you ask Tailwind to write you a hero section or any of these UI elements, it's going to do a fairly good job at it. Yes, it's not going to be perfect and it will never replace a UI designer, but unfortunately, a lot of people vibe coding their apps really don't care about that. Another thing I'm curious about is if we can actually put this down to AI's fault 100%. Yes, I'm sure 80% to 90% is AI's fault, but I do wonder how libraries like shadcn have impacted Tailwind Plus. Because Tailwind Plus is offering UI kits, UI elements, and a load of different templates. When you look at a library like shadcn, it's offering that all for free and all open source. So I think a lot of people have switched over to using that who maybe couldn't afford a subscription to Tailwind Plus. But what do you think about all of this? What do you think about AI's impact on open source? Let me know in the comments below. While you're there, subscribe, and as always, see you in the next one.